Midnight wind howled through the broken slats of the fence as 34-year-old single dad Mason Hale drove the last nail in with numb fingers. His flannel shirt clung to his back, soaked with sweat and exhaustion. That's when he saw her, barefoot, breathless, standing in the moonlight like a ghost out of place. The rich girl, with tear-streaked cheeks and tangled hair, whispered, "You're the one I've been waiting for." Mason blinked. Was she lost? Or was this the moment his life was about to change forever? The hammer hit the final nail, and Mason Hale let out a quiet breath. It was past midnight, and his arms were sore from hours of repairing the same old fence that separated his run-down trailer from the open road. Each slam of the hammer was less about fixing wood and more about silencing the chaos inside him. He had no money left after rent. His 6-year-old daughter Emily was asleep inside, clutching a teddy bear with one eye missing. He didn't know what tomorrow held, but tonight the fence was whole again. The silence was broken by the soft crunch of gravel. He turned his head sharply. A woman stood just outside the fence, barefoot and shivering in a silk dress that looked like it belonged on a movie set, not a dirt road in rural Tennessee. Her hair was in loose curls, her lips trembling, not from cold, but something deeper, fear, shock. "Are you okay?" Mason called out, stepping closer cautiously. The woman didn't answer. She took a step forward instead. I didn't mean to scare you," she said, her voice shaking. "I just didn't know where else to go." Her feet were dirty, her arms covered in goosebumps. Her expensive dress was torn slightly at the hem. Mason's gut twisted. She looked like someone who didn't belong here, someone from a place where money solved problems before they even began. "Did someone hurt you?" he asked, lowering. His voice suddenly protective. She nodded slowly. Then her eyes landed on the old rusted swing set behind him. "This house, this fence, I've been here before." Mason frowned. "I don't think so." "I have," she said quietly. "When I was 10, with my mother before she died." That hit Mason like a slap. "This place used to belong to the Lockwoods. They lost it years ago. Bank seized it before I bought it." The woman let out a broken laugh. "I am a Lockwood, Belle Lockwood." That name wasn't just rich. It was royal in these parts. The Lockwoods owned half the valley. The family was whispered about like they were untouchable. And yet, here she was, standing in the dark, no shoes, shaking. Mason pushed the gate open and stepped aside. "Come inside," he said. "It's warm. I'll make some tea." She hesitated. "You don't have to explain," he added gently. "Just come in." She walked through barefoot on the wood porch, and Mason noticed how she kept glancing over her shoulder, like someone was following her. Inside the trailer, the space was humble but clean. Mason laid a towel at the door for her feet, handed her a blanket, and started boiling water. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, sitting on the edge of his faded sofa, voice barely above a whisper. Mason didn't look at her as he answered, "Because I've been down too. And someone once opened their door for me when they didn't have to." She stared at him. "I lost my wife 3 years ago," he said quietly. "If someone had helped her that night, maybe she'd still be here." That silenced her. When he finally turned, he saw her eyes glistening. "I didn't expect kindness tonight," she said. "Not anymore." "Then I'm glad I surprised you," Mason replied. They sat in silence, sipping tea while the heater hummed, and for a moment the world outside, filled with betrayal, money, and the shadows chasing her, fell quiet. But neither of them knew that within 24 hours the Lockwood name would shake the whole town, and Mason's life would never be the same again. Mason didn't sleep that night. He sat on the edge of the worn recliner, watching the living room dimly lit by the stovetop bulb, as Belle Lockwood slept restlessly on the couch beneath an old flannel blanket. She curled into herself like a child, her expensive dress wrinkled and her face twisted in quiet fear. He didn't know what she was running from, but whatever it was, it had left bruises. Maybe not on her skin, but somewhere. Deeper, somewhere harder to heal. By sunrise, she was awake. Mason was already making pancakes. Emily, his daughter, tugged on his shirt. "Daddy," she whispered, "who's that lady?" He knelt. "She's just someone who needed help. Be kind, okay?" Emily's innocent eyes widened as she nodded solemnly. "Like how Mr. Parker helped us when our tire popped." "Exactly," Mason said, kissing her forehead. Belle sat quietly at the table, holding a mug with both hands, like it was the only warmth she had left in her life. When Emily offered her a drawing, a crooked heart, with stick figures, Brielle's eyes welled. "Thank you," she whispered. "That's the first thing anyone's given me in a long time that didn't come with strings attached." After breakfast, Mason walked her outside. The daylight brought her face into full view. High cheekbones, delicate jaw, eyes that had seen. "You're too much for someone so young. I need to tell you something," she said, staring at the fence he'd fixed. Mason leaned against a post. "I figured. My father," she began, voice low, "cut me off. Kicked me out of the family estate last night in front of 30 people. Said I was a disgrace for refusing an arranged engagement with the son of his business partner." Mason's brow tightened. "I said no," she continued, "because he's a liar, a fraud. My father's company is crumbling under debt. They needed the merger, and I was the currency." Her voice cracked. "So I walked out." Mason said nothing. Let her speak. "I thought I'd go to my friend's place, but she turned me away, said she didn't want trouble with the Lockwoods. I ended up walking here barefoot like some scene out of a nightmare, and then I saw the fence. I remembered it. My mom used to bring me here when she was dying. Said it was the only place she ever felt safe." She looked up. "I didn't know who lived here now, but when I saw you working, I don't know why, I felt like I could breathe." Mason scratched the back of his neck. "Well, I'm no therapist, but if you're looking for someone who doesn't care about your last name, you found him." Brielle smiled softly, then paused. "Would you let me stay for a few days, just until I figure things out? I'll help with chores, cooking, whatever you need." Mason stared at her. He had every reason to say no. She was chaos. She was the Lockwoods. She was someone who didn't belong in his quiet, barely functioning life, but she was also honest, shattered, and brave enough to walk barefoot through the night to protect her dignity. "You can stay," he said finally, "but you'll have to deal with Emily asking 500 questions a day." Brielle laughed, a real, aching laugh. "I think I can handle that." 2 days later, she was on her knees scrubbing the kitchen floor when Mason got the call. It was from an unknown number. He nearly didn't answer. "Mason Hale," a deep voice said. "This is Detective Pierce from Franklin County PD. We need to ask you some questions about a missing person, Brielle Lockwood." His stomach dropped. "She's not missing," Mason said, glancing at her through the doorway. "She's been reported as such by her father, and he's offering a reward for any tips." Mason's jaw clenched. "She's safe," he said, "and she doesn't want to be found." There was a pause. "Are you saying she's with you?" "I'm saying she's not a child. And maybe, instead of sending cops, her father should ask why his daughter ran away barefoot in the middle of the night." He hung up. Brielle was watching him now, towel in hand. "They called you, didn't they?" "Yeah." "What did you say?" "That you're staying." A long silence passed between them. Then Brielle walked over and looked him straight in the eyes. "No one's ever stood up for me like that," she whispered. And Mason, who hadn't let anyone in since his wife's death, found his walls cracking in the presence of the barefoot heiress who'd walked into his life like a storm. But storms come with thunder, and the real downpour hadn't even begun yet. 3 days later, the storm arrived, not in the sky, but in the form of 2 black SUVs with tinted windows rolling to a slow stop outside Mason's trailer. Mason stepped outside, shielding his eyes from the glare. He didn't need a badge or A warning. He knew this wasn't a social visit. The back door opened. A tall, greying man in a custom charcoal suit stepped out, followed by two stone-faced men in black. His jaw was sharp, his smile artificial, and his presence ice-cold. Belle stepped out behind Mason and froze. Her breath hitched. Dad. Randall Lockwood, the man whose name could shake boardrooms, the man whose signature had crushed competitors, the man who just 3 nights ago publicly humiliated his only daughter in front of dozens. "You've made quite the scene, sweetheart," he said smoothly, brushing imaginary dust off his sleeve. Running away, barefoot like a fairy tale fugitive, Mason stepped between them instinctively. "She doesn't want to go with you." Randall's eyes narrowed at him. "And you are?" "Someone who treats her like a human being." Randall's lips twitched, part disdain, part mockery. "She's my daughter," he said. "You're a mechanic with a leaky roof and a child who draws on the walls." Mason's fists clenched, but Belle grabbed his wrist. "Don't! He wants you angry." Randall stepped forward. "This little rebellion of yours? It ends now. Get in the car." Brielle's voice shook. "No." His face twitched, just for a second. "Excuse me?" "I said no, Father. I'm not your pawn anymore. You wanted me to marry for business, for control. I refused. And you threw me out like I was one of your broken stocks." Randall's voice dropped low and venomous. "Do you think this man can protect you? A backwoods handyman with a rusting truck?" Belle didn't hesitate. "No, but he has something you never will. A heart." Silence. Even the wind held its breath. Randall's composure cracked, his fists tightening at his sides. Then, in a sharp pivot, he signaled his men. "We're done here." As the SUVs drove away, Mason turned to her. "That was brave and insane." She laughed, wiping tears from her cheeks. "I've always been insane. I just never knew how free it felt." That night, Belle cooked dinner. Spaghetti, garlic toast, and store-brand lemonade. Mason watched as she danced barefoot in the kitchen with Emily, twirling and laughing. And in that moment, Mason realized something terrifying. He was falling for her, not the heiress, not the daughter of power, but the woman who scrubbed his floors, helped his daughter with math, and defended herself in front of the most ruthless man in Tennessee. Still, storms don't pass quietly. 2 weeks later, Mason returned home late from a welding gig. The porch light flickered, the door was open, his stomach dropped. He burst in. "Belle! Emily!" Then he froze. Belle was seated on the couch, her hands trembling, a letter in her lap. Emily was in her room, safe. "What happened?" She didn't answer, just handed him the letter. It was from a bank, not just any bank, the Lockwood family trust account. "Dear Miss Lockwood, following the death of your late maternal grandmother, your inheritance, valued at $7.8 million, has now been fully released as of your 28th birthday, effective immediately." Mason sat down, hard. You didn't know?" Belle shook her head. "My father never told me. He always said my mother left nothing behind, that we were indebted to him. But this was hidden, buried, probably to keep me under control." Mason exhaled. "So you're rich," she finished bitterly. "But I don't care about the money. What scares me is what he'll do next when he realizes I know." Mason looked at her. "You have a choice now. You could vanish, take it and disappear." She nodded. "Or I could fight." Mason tilted his head. "What would your mom do?" Brielle's eyes filled. "With fire. She'd burn his empire down, not out of revenge, but to free every person he ever used like he used me." Belle didn't sleep that night. Neither did Mason. They sat at the kitchen table long after Emily had gone to bed. Bank papers and legal letters spread across the surface like a map of buried truths. The old clock ticked, and the heater rattled in the corner, but neither made his sound louder than the thoughts screaming in their heads. "This account's real?" Mason asked finally, his rough fingers sliding over the embossed seal. Brielle nodded. "I already verified it. It was held in a silent trust by my mother's lawyer. She made sure my father couldn't touch it, not even if he had power of attorney. And now it's mine." Mason leaned back, stunned. "So what now?" She took a slow breath. "I'm going to dismantle my father's illusion piece by piece, quietly, legally, and with every ounce of pain he caused me. I'm going to make sure the world sees the truth." He studied her face, different now. Not the barefoot girl he found trembling in the dark, but a woman forged by betrayal. Strong, certain, dangerous in all the right ways. "I want you with me," she added. Almost shyly, Mason blinked. "Me? You've seen me at my worst. You never asked for anything. You protected me when I had nothing. I don't trust anyone else." Mason hesitated. "I fix fences, Brielle. I change spark plugs. I don't know anything about corporate warfare." Her eyes softened. "No, but you know people, you know truth, and when everything's built on lies, someone like you is exactly what I need." And so, in the dead of night, they made a plan. 2 weeks later, Nashville, Tennessee. The Lockwood Foundation Charity Gala was the biggest event of the year. Cameras flashed, violins played, and gold glitter rained from chandeliers. Randall Lockwood stood tall in his custom tuxedo, grinning for the press, surrounded by fake smiles and plastic praise. But he didn't know Brielle had just bought the largest chunk of stock in Lockwood Enterprises through 3 separate shell corporations. He didn't know his top accountant, Mr. Kessler, had agreed to meet with her quietly and hand over decades of falsified ledgers in exchange for whistleblower immunity. And he didn't know that inside the very building where he smiled for cameras, his daughter stood in a sleek black in pantsuit, head held high, no makeup, no fancy hair, just fire in her veins and steel in her eyes. Mason stood beside her, clean-shaven, nervous but grounded. "I feel like a fish in a shark tank," he muttered. She smiled. "You're not the one with blood in the water, he is." At exactly 9:17 p.m., Brielle walked past security like a ghost reborn. No announcement, no fanfare, just silence. And when Randall turned, he froze. The crowd followed his gaze and gasped. "Sweetheart," he said, voice tight, forced into a smile. "You're alive?" "No thanks to you," she replied calmly. He stepped closer. "This is not the place." "You're right," she said. "The courtroom will be." Then she lifted her phone and tapped a button. On every screen in the ballroom, documents appeared, bank records, internal memos, secret payments, company fraud, tax evasion, employee abuse settlements. The Lockwood name collapsed in 10 seconds of deafening silence. Randall's face turned ghostly pale. You'll destroy everything." Brielle's voice never wavered. "No, I'm just telling the truth. What happens next is on you." Then she walked away. 1 month later, Randall Lockwood was indicted on 13 counts of corporate fraud and financial misconduct. News outlets swarmed his estate. His reputation sank like an anchor. Brielle donated half, her inheritance, to a fund for single mothers and girls aging out of foster care. And Mason, he didn't just watch from the sidelines. He opened a new auto repair garage, this time with Brielle as silent partner. A clean, warm space with a kids' corner for Emily and a sign out front that read, "Hale's Honest Fix, built with heart." People came because they trusted him, and on slow nights, Brielle would sit on the porch with Mason and Emily, sipping sweet tea and watching the sun set over the repaired fence. "Do you ever miss the mansion?" he asked one evening. She looked at the cracked porch, the laughter from inside, the dirt road that led to peace, and shook her head. "I never felt more like myself than the night I walked here with nothing." Mason wrapped an arm around her. "Well, you've got something now," she smiled. "Yeah, I've got everything." A quiet morning breeze drifted through the screen door as Mason poured 2 mugs of coffee. Outside, the fence still stood, stronger now, freshly painted by Belle herself. The same fence where she first appeared barefoot in the dark, changed. Everything, and never looked back. Belle sat at the kitchen table, flipping through papers. Not legal ones this time, but school enrollment forms, business license updates, and volunteer coordination schedules. Her life had changed, and yet, in many ways, had finally just begun. "I got a call from Nashville this morning," she said, without looking up. Mason raised a brow. "Good or bad?" she smiled. "Very good. They're offering me a board seat at the Women's Recovery Shelter. They want me to oversee grant allocations and education programs." He leaned against the counter, sipping slowly. "That's huge." "It is," she said, voice low, "and I'm scared. But I also feel right, like I'm finally doing what my mother would have done. Not building empires, building people." He walked over and kissed the top of her head. "That's what makes you different." Then Emily burst in, hair tangled, pajamas rumpled. "Can we have pancakes with the smiley faces again?" Mason laughed. "Of course, baby." Belle bent down. "I'll help. I get to draw the eyes." As they cooked together, Mason watched them, his daughter full of trust, Belle full of love, and him full of something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. A few weeks later. Lockwood Estate, auction day. Belle stood in the grand marble foyer of her childhood home, now stripped bare. Chandeliers boxed, portraits removed. Her father's empire was being sold piece by piece. She wasn't here for revenge. She was here for closure. Randall Lockwood, under house arrest until sentencing, sat slouched in an armchair in the corner. He was thinner, grayer, not the monster from before, but just a man, a broken man. "I didn't think you'd come," he muttered. "I didn't come for you," Belle said calmly. "I came to walk away." He looked at her, genuinely, this time. "You really loved him, didn't you, your mother?" Belle nodded. "And she loved this place, but not for its chandeliers or ballrooms. She loved the little garden behind the fence." Randall exhaled. "You sound just like her." "No," Belle whispered. "I am her now." She turned to leave, but then paused. "Despite everything, I hope one day you figure out how to love something more than your reflection." She left without looking back. 6 months later. Small town parade. The autumn festival was in full swing. Kids with candy-sticky fingers ran through streets, folk music played from the gazebo, and under a tree by the food stands, Mason held Brielle's hand. Emily sat on his shoulders, waving a tiny flag. "You know," Brielle said, squeezing his fingers, "I used to think love had to come in grand gestures, diamond rings, private jets." He looked at her, smiling. "And now I know it looks like midnight fences, broken to-do lists, and pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse." They shared a laugh. The mayor took the mic. "And now, a big thank you to our very own Belle Lockwood, who's asked to be introduced by her new name. A Belle hail." The crowd clapped. Mason froze, turned to her. She smiled up at him, eyes glistening. "I figured it was time." "You serious?" "Completely," she said. "This life, this love, this little town, it's all I ever needed. Not $5 million dresses or private estates, just people who see me, not the Lockwood name." He took her face in his hands, heart thudding. "You sure you want to be stuck with a broke mechanic forever?" She grinned. "You're not broke. You're rich where it counts." Then she kissed him, and behind them the town cheered, not for the heiress, not for the drama, but for the woman who found her way barefoot into the arms of kindness and never left.